Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 100 Pictures of Honey reading series. This series has been on hiatus for about 6 months, so thank you for remembering us. Thank you for coming back for the return tonight and what a return. You have four wonderful poets tonight, and hearing them read will be a balm for you. I know it is for me. I've been attending a lot more readings lately just because it soothes me. It gives me something that I need in times that are not always soothing that we are in. So I hope you'll feel that way tonight when you hear people read. Feel free to use the chat to leave comments, lines that you like, use those emojis and those reactions, and support our writers in that way. Our first reader is going to be Kimberly Ann Priest. And I've known Kimberly's work for quite some time. She's a fellow Sundress author, so she's a pressmate of mine. But also, I've reviewed some of her work, and she's been very prolific the last several years. Her work is lyric and intelligent and high stakes in its honesty and just very clear in its strength, no matter what topic she's taking on. And many of the topics that she does take on are difficult topics. I have such admiration for the beautiful way that she can craft things that are difficult. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our first reader, Kimberly.
Donna, thank you so much for those words. That felt good. Beautiful, intelligent. I can't remember everything you said, but I want to have that like written somewhere on the days I'm struggling. I'm like, I do this. um, and yeah, thank you for putting this together. It's been a long time since I've been to 100 Pictures of Honey. So yeah, it's fun to be part of the reset. And I was going to say, I love the sign behind your head. It's kind of like a crown. You have a big light up neon sign. So I'm going to read from two of my books, just one poem from one of them and three from my newest. But as Donna said, I have a sundress book. This is Slaughter the One Bird. It was my first. And I'm showing it because my books sort of loosely go in a chronology of life story, and my life story had so many facets, which many of us ours do, that I couldn't put it all in one book. It'd be too many things to explore. So that was my first. My second was is Tether and Lung. It was published by Texas Review Press in February of this year. And then I was very lucky. I won the Backwaters Press prize in poetry from University of Nebraska for this book, Wolves and Shells. And I also got to do both of these covers. So, because I do photography, and so I'm pretty proud of them. So I'm going to read you one poem from Tether and Lung, just to give you a bit of an introduction to what's in here. But it is a poem that sort of, the book ends. It's the last poem in the book, and the book ends where the story in the next book begins. And this is one of my favorite poems. It is dedicated to my daughter, and it's titled Consider the Loquat. And I did not know what a loquat was until I saw poems, or a call for poems, to the Loquat Festival in Florida. And don't ask me where I saw that call. I don't remember. But I was like, what the heck is a loquat? So I looked it up and I sent them this poem, but I never heard back about it. But it ended up being a poem, to put in this book. So instead of considering the lilies, we will consider the loquat. I pack your liver into my suitcase, since I would not feel generous or poetic, stealing away your heart. And since liver means the same as heart in ancient poetry, and I imagine this is because, like them, I feel this pain in my gut, not my chest, as though the wind has been knocked out of me. So hard, I'm not sure I am doing the thing I am doing, leaving you. I'm not sure I can see it this way. Not now. Rather, I must pretend that we are doing something different, perhaps going on extended separate journeys, or submitting ourselves to some divinely ordained plan. Maybe we are a river breaking in its path to form two independent streams. Or we are like the loquat tree that blooms out of season. And I should not think about this whole thing too much, about how it might be unnatural to leave at 15, barely a woman, assuring me that now is a good time to go, as though the deep reds and yellows of autumn are a sign, a portent. And I would be a fool if I did not heed the warning in your eyes. You know me too well, my daughter. You know I will feel this pain long enough to wish I had stolen your heart. So again, that's the last poem in this book. And the moment that we're living in, I want it to be a moment. I hope it's not longer. But and in some ways it's been long. It has been long, but there are ways that we all cope and even sort of healthily dissociate from a lot of the things going on around us, because you can't bear up under the weight of all of it. But that poem, for me, was the way that I did leave my children when they were in their teens, and there's a story for that. But the way that we try to find a narrative and hang on to a narrative that helps us get through it. We write a narrative that may be even a little different from what's actually happening, but it's the one we can hang on to. And we look to stories, we look to poetry to give us that, not just an escape, but just a way to assure ourselves that there are other ways to look at something. So this next book, Wolves, it begins at that place of moving on from my home, which was a domestic violence situation. No situation is the same, so who is harmed and how they are harmed can be very different. And I was in a situation where I owned nothing. My in-laws owned everything, and they were, constantly pushing me into a corner. And I had to, or at least I felt I had to leave to try to get some footing somewhere else so that I would have a place for my kids to come to. That's not how it worked out. And I won't tell that whole story, but I will pick up where this one leaves off. Where that last poem left off, with a poem in this book titled Taxonomy. Okay. Taxonomy. There is a way to say a name in the present that changes the way you say that name in its future. Like the way my own name and my mother's name became both blessing and curse in the mouths of the men that spoke them. When I first left my home, 2 years after divorcing my husband, 2 years before my son's graduation, and 3 years before my daughter wrote the poems that would break me, I said my daughter's name to the breeze, then my son's name while standing by a river in New Hampshire, feeling finally free, not feeling the names like blessing or curse or anything so weighty, only their inscription in the earth of the journey that carried me, as if I was sure they could hear me, as if to declare, Mother is alive, follow. As if I didn't know I was leaving. As if I really thought they'd come running behind, waving their arms with joy. And I'm going to follow that with a poem titled On the Ishnala Trail. The context of this book is 2 years that I spent homeless and did a lot of couch surfing, was able to, reach out to people and move around. But it was probably the most stressful 2 years of my life. And this one is a poem from that time period. On the Ishnala Trail. Siladago Canadensis crown acres of woodland fields on either side of the trail. They stand regal in pyramidal shaped inflorescence, bold mustard yellow pitched into a cerulean sky. Sukan blooms dangle from each stem, dainty and hanging, like little bells tolling gently with each breeze that lifts the field waving, yellow, yellow, yellow. By itself, alone, Ishnala proclaims, a Winnebago name given to the burial grounds nearby, where a large lone rock extends over the waters of Muir Lake as its symbol. But each stalk of chiming gold is not alone. Rather, their saint-like postures bundle together so thick one could not easily pass through them. They sway and pronounce nothing but the abundance of August and September. Together they ripen and pray. And I am also not by myself, alone among these flowers, or the trees that canopy over me as the trail leads away from the fields and into the woods. Ishnala, I repeat over and over again, Ishnala, Ishnala, a response to what my father said when I told him I couldn't get a job and I had no permanent place to go. And he answered, get married. And I let the phone fall away from my face. The simplicity of his reply startling in its brief summation of my worth, or that any man would suffice for this. Ishnala, I speak, to the wild world around me. Plea, pardon, manifesto. A stream dances along the trail like a child inviting me to play. Nearby, a park bench opens, waiting to receive me. Part of the troubling, story of domestic violence is that it's supported by the fact that you don't have people to turn to. You don't have a support system. And I'm going to read this last poem, and the reason being just that the moment that we're living in, I keep calling it a moment because I want it to be, but the way that we are so dependent on the people around us. None of us are independent of the worlds that we live in. And it's so easy to look at someone and say, leave your situation, move on, get away, living in this country right now, go somewhere else. Like, it's so easy to say those things, but in reality, our lives are just woven in to the worlds that we exist in, our jobs, our livelihoods, our family, whatever it might be. So I'm going to read this last one because it goes with that. After 2 years of homelessness, I had to return to the place where I had come from. So here's the poem for that. Unpacking. My daughter opens a box of books and begins stacking them in a corner one at a time, saying aloud their names. My nerves sway with the motion of her arms. Unspecified depressive disorder, reads the paperwork I pull out of the file box underneath PTSD, at which I ponder 2 years of intermittent homelessness, separation from children, loss of partner, family, and friends, the way the man now walking through the door of my new apartment with another box of books and a little lamp abused me for coming apart at my seams with barking dogs and the clank of dishes in a sink, too much TV at 6 a.m. Sunday morning, his mother's this and that, all the relatives crowded into his parents' living room space, and me slipping away to decompress. I open a box of bowls and cups, begin stacking them gently while my ex-husband leaves to grab more boxes to unpack. The both of us falling into the rhythm of our marriage. He, the heavy lifter, and I, the curator of all our fragile parts. We do this in relative silence, still not saying what needs to be said. The unspecified truth my psychiatrist is not trained to properly name. This perfectly functional occasion, the order we crave, our dependency on machinery that harms us. There's nothing worse than having to ask your ex-husband to move you into an apartment because you have nobody else to call. But here I am today. That was several years ago, and I have these beautiful books to show survival and life. And thank you so much for listening to me, and may this next few years be a moment.
Thank you, Kimberly. Beautiful reading from your beautiful work. Um, I'm always amazed, like I said, at the way that you create beauty from difficulty. And I think everybody heard that tonight. And hopefully now we are done with nonsense people in the chat. I apologize for that. Hopefully not everybody had to see it. Um, it never ceases to amaze me why somebody literally registers for something to do something that infantile and dumb. So Kimberly, thank you for the beautiful things you were reading. And we took care of it pretty quickly. So I apologize to you for that. We're going to go on to our next reader because we need more of the beauty. Our next reader is Taylor Byas, Dr. Taylor Byas. I've also known Taylor's work for quite some time. Her new book, Resting Bitch Face, is a beautiful example of ekphrasis, not just ekphrasis of art, particularly photography, but I was trying to come up with an explanation for how I felt about reading it. The best thing I could come up with was self-ekphrasis, right? A really careful examination of the self, not just through kind of mental introspection, but also the gaze of others, and even the mirror or the camera lens. And I'm so excited to hear Taylor read some of these poems tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you, Kimberly, for those gorgeous poems. I'm excited to hear Travis and Nadia after. And thank you to everyone who is here tonight. Yeah, Resting Bitch Face is a few weeks old, and it's very much about the ways that, women in marginalized bodies are constantly surveilled. And it kind of looks at that through the lens of art and photography and film. And there's a lot of mirrors and reflections and ekphrasis, as Donna has said in the book. And that's pretty much what you need to know. I'm going to start with, they call the party the Sept because they call the party the Sept because it's cinematic, how shit always goes down. During the pregame, the liquor lends you a lens, and every look becomes a slow pan, zoom in. Your homegirl bruises her new Revlon lipstick onto the neck of a bottle of Henny. Your mascara smudges under your eyes already, and why can't we just begin where we know the night will end? During the car ride, your girls make big plans for anonymous hands to shake something loose in them. Y'all pull up to an apartment complex and find the party, find the overflow, 10 to 15 men posted up on the outside walkway, calling first dibs on everything that stalks through. Inside, your group melts into the steam of body on body, chest to back to front to smack to hand to thigh to my girlfriend don't have to know about you. Anything that sits still long enough becomes a seat. Some girls find their feet On the kitchen granite cool, pools of spilled jungle juice kicked into rain by their heels. A bottle somewhere shatters. One of your friends is disappearing down a frat boy's tobaccoed throat. You've got the word no pocketed for the cup a man will press to your lips. Somewhere a bottle shatters someone. Find your corner. For safety, the scene must play out. Watch and see how they all slip into their roles, how each frame makes a stranger of everyone. Um, so as Donna mentioned, there's a lot of ekphrasis in this book, and part of it is because like years ago, I just had the idea and I was like, "Ah, I just want to write an ekphrastic chapbook," and then I started doing that, and then I realized I had way more to say. Although I guess Shudder is like part of that chapbook, but then also this book. But the very first ekphrastic poem that I wrote was this one, and it's really silly, and I like reading it. And I wrote it because I came across this quote in the Cincinnati Business Courier that reads, "A University of Cincinnati neurologist suggests Mona Lisa faked the smile in the painting of her made famous by Leonardo da Vinci," which I think that's hilarious. They thought that was just like so groundbreaking. Um, I don't know. I feel like, anyone who's been in an uncomfortable situation knows that kind of smile that you put on when you're somewhere that you don't really want to be. It very much gives that. So, a woman to woman with Mona after Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. Being the muse isn't what it's all cracked up to be. Who can tell us to freeze and expect us to do it? Sitting still ain't no woman's work. And Leo fucking bought it, didn't he? Just swiveled his brush where white, yellow, and brown made naked, said, "Sweetheart, tesoro," flattened the brush's hairs on your lips like a thumb or tongue, an extension of the fingers that could no longer distinguish between canvas or shoulder. Thought that smile was his own special thing. But girl, I could call it from a mile away. That's that if you don't hurry the hell up look, that tip of the tongue bastard barely caught. That's that last joke wasn't really that funny, but I'll give you something, something. Trust me, I know it ain't nothing mysterious about annoyance. But now that they know, let 'em know. Took them 500 years to figure out this was all side eye. Girl, please, I mean, really, what is there to be afraid of? Hilarious. I think it's hilarious. Okay, let's go to the titular poem, Resting Bitch Face, which came into being because at the height of the pandemic, when masks were heavily mandated, I realized that men stopped telling me to smile because they couldn't see my whole face to police it. And so this poem was born, and it has an epigraph from Alexis Pauline Gumbs' book Spill that reads, "How did you get here? What trumped up troop of slave ship sloop put you here on my doorstep in your nastiness? Something about the set of my face says slave, cracks sharp in its stank and slits you uncomfortable. And what do you make of me again in that gas station parking lot, in the grocery aisle in its fluorescence, when you tell me to smile for you? You too pretty to be frowning makes a fugitive of me, shutters me closed for your business. You even smooth talk yourself into a lie. Say smile and mean relax, mean open, mean peel back, mean lights, camera, action, put on a show for me. Last time I smiled for a man, my teeth sparked white in the dark of his bedroom like police lights in a rearview mirror. What could I afford with that currency besides his violence? Smiling has never bought me tenderness, never tendered me a love that let my face be bitch, and ain't that what you gonna call me anyways? Whether I thaw out for you or not, don't this always end the same? The bright you coax from my mouth, snuffed out as soon as I show it to you. Go. Go. I haven't read this one in a while. Hmm. A Grammar of Loneliness. There is the moment when rain heavies into one unending ring, the sky a dark curtain pulled shut, the clouds weak as a bladder. Solitude is always messy, the windowsill peppered wet, the thunder outside running a slip knife along the edges of my sadness, jimmying it open. There is a moment when my aloneness is flayed down to something animal, the bullish man in my mind for years, my body still capable of rising to a cold wind or warm hand. I'm sorry, where are my manners? Language programs a scene in our minds, even when we write around it. The cold wind becomes a goose flesh nipple, a warm hand dips between the thighs. I am lonelier here on the page than I've ever been. While the storm still drums, I slink out of bed. I find a days old bruise in the shower curtain's dark blue eclipse and massage it. Can I write in tenderness months later where it colors itself purple, where it sleeks itself pink? I could touch myself in the downpour just like this, and loneliness will become a character in the room. And when it makes itself known, I will call it by another name. Okay, I think I'll do two more. Um, One is so at the beginning of each section of my book, I have these kind of like poem essays. Because I think one of the things I wanted this book to do was to kind of transform some of the ways that we think about how criticism can exist in the world. And I think it's very much sometimes get kept in ways that are inaccessible and people want it to appear a certain way. Scholarship is supposed to look a certain way. But I think that criticism and those sorts of conversations very much should also be taking place in the art that we create. And so this is one of the poem essays in the book, Water as Villain Origin Story. One, would you believe they blamed the river for its honesty, the way it forages for anything's likeness, bleeds each season's foliage from the trees, then suspends the leaves in its wet resin? When I say they, I mean the gods. When I say the gods, I am refusing to trouble the waters with my learning. History tells us a German chemist discovered the modern day mirror, silvered glass like a rotted tooth. History traces back to poorer models of copper and bronze, but does not find its way back to the pre-speech technology of water. What I mean is that myth and history are man-made, both created to explain away their sins. Two, the other day, a man suggested rain was a myth, out in the open. As we waited at the curb for an Uber, the sky grumbled like a father trucked from slumber. Somewhere a small stream spidered out to a full split before the nocturnal water broke. In the storm, he jettied his arm from the body's march and opened his palm, asked, "Why can't I hold it?" willing gravity to soften with symphony. I have to tell you that this was a date and I didn't call him back. I have to tell you that it was not irrationality that had him cupping the air, but envy. And this brings me back to softening. The state of things, the crescent of his hand flexed into a gourd, water going from vapor to liquid to looking glass, tucked into the chemistry of it. There was a joke about men softening and hardening, I swear. Three, in every tragic story about a woman, water is a parenthetical. A young girl watching the neighbor's son beat his own reflection in the lip of a murky pond, failing to rid himself of how much of his father he found in it. An older girl's scalding shower to wash away a tragic evidence. Me, on that date, witnessing a man's ego rear its head in the storm. Even Medusa, raped by the god of the sea in Athena's temple. I won't rehash the details, but her killer had to seek out her reflection in a mirrored shield to behead her. By the God's design, he watched himself do it. He was his own understudy. For while doing dishes a while back, I cut my finger on a steak knife hidden beneath the quilted foam, ran it under warm water, the bleeding as urgent as Poseidon's touch, or a man inviting himself into a woman's smile. The skin softened, and I know I'm supposed to say something about softening as sabotage, but it isn't my place. Crying, I called out for my lover. He wrapped my hand in damp paper towels over the sink, tenderly applied pressure. When my first tear fell, he startled at the new moisture, looked fully into my eyes. Whatever he found in their surface, my pain, relief, the secret knowledge that the water from the sink would have been a gentler healer, turned him to stone. Okay, and then one last short one. It's just the final poem in the book. It is after Carrie Mae Weems' kitchen table series, which are these self-portraits of her kind of sitting in the kitchen. This one in particular, there's a man kind of standing over her shoulder, and you can't see his face. It's covered by a hat. So this is In the Lens of Desire, after that picture by Carrie Mae Weems, and also after Good Dress by Brittany Rogers. I want to be straight-backed and brazen. No, I want to know that I deserve it. I want a man as quiet as a rumor hovering over my shoulder. I want a table pebbled with my living and mine only, his drink drained from my cup. I want the ornery praise of a good as gone camel's fizzle, bowed in my good glass ashtray. I want the silk kimono and the camisole, the unsanctioned nipple in its silhouette showing. I want to stop wanting. So give me a mirror, a camera, give me my face and the third silver of a man's eye. Give me a finger that fish hooks in the corner of my smirk, that crooks a man to my kitchen when no dinner has been served. Give me a cheekbone sure as a scar, my new brush, my good comb. Give me hair so nice it appears twice, here and there, a photograph in which I am the center. Give me your eye. I've already given you mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Um, beautiful reading. Awesome book. Highly recommend. Everybody's or Kimberly's books and Taylor's, everybody's books tonight. Just buy them all. Um, do yourself a favor. And I think one of the things I was really struck by hearing you read these poems right after Kimberly's, um, right, this kind of like this interdependence is present in both of your work, and then your messages or your words about tenderness are going to kind of lead us into my introduction for Travis's work, and then your words about water, which are going to kind of lead me into my introduction about Nadia's work. So I mean, I think that it's really like you'd think I knew what I was doing or something, putting the four of you together. um I don't guarantee that, but sometimes it works, right? Thank you so much for that. Our next reader is Travis Chiwing Lau. I had the honor of hosting Travis at a reading for the first issue of the new journal that I'm editing. And in the introduction I gave him that night, I mentioned that one of the things I loved about his poems was their tenderness. And then lo and behold, his book is out and it's called, What's Left is Tender. Something that kind of hit it on the nose. And I think there's a tenderness in Travis's work, a tenderness for the body, for relationships, a tenderness in a world that is not always tender, that I really admire. And I know that after you hear his poems, you're going to feel the same way. So, Travis, it's all yours.
Thank you so very much, Donna. I mean, in some ways, it was like Kismet that you knew that the work was about tenderness. And in many ways, I'm just so grateful to be here, to be with poets that I've read and deeply admired. I mean, y'all are incredible writers that it is an honor to be reading alongside you. Just for accessibility reasons, I have an accessibility copy of all the poems I'm going to be reading this evening. I will go in that order, so hopefully it will not be confusing at all. But I am reading from a book that just came out in July called What's Left is Tender. And it is a meditation on tenderness. Tenderness as a sensation, tenderness as a feeling, tenderness as a theory, tenderness as a practice. But I'm particularly interested in the ways in which tenderness is not always a feel-good emotion. It can be painful, it can be disorienting, and for those of us who haven't necessarily learned to receive it, it can be very jarring to experience. Um, I wanted to start with a poem called Incantation for Access. I've been really interested in the ways in which accessibility has been simultaneously a buzzword, but also one that has become newly relevant in a pandemic world. Just for some context, I teach disability theory and literature, but so much of what I do is thinking about accessibility in broad ways. I have scoliosis-related disabilities, so my back, my spine is a reverse S shape, and chronic pain has shaped every bit of my lived experience. And this poem was an attempt to think about what it means to beg for access in a world that has every capacity to offer it, but chooses not to offer it. So this is Incantation for Access. The classroom is the university's soft flesh. Jennifer Doyle. To whom it may concern, I request shelter from the clock that bends my body to it with heavy hands. I try to be compliant until it stretches too far, and I can only be left hurting 2 leaves and a bag of frozen peas to keep futures from aching into closure, because I'm a series of missteps when the ramp is blocked or there isn't one at all, which they always say they are working on but never seem to finish. I'm sure that's what I seem like to you, a ramp to nowhere, a series of incompletes. When I scribble to the bitter end, flopped with sweat, but I ask only for the benefit of the doubt. Yes, the one benefit in my favor, as I fumble toward knowing, like you once did, and still do with a little more help than before, when paper made gaps in doors, but never held them open. I ask you now for this, to be open, to stay open. A lot of my work is also really invested in thinking about the medical industrial complex. This next poem is called Ars Moriendi, which is Latin for the art of dying. In the early modern period, there was an obsession with manuals that taught people how to die with dignity. So I was very interested in what it meant to write an Ars Moriendi for our current moment in a world of deeply inaccessible and inequitable healthcare. So this is Ars Moriendi. Chapter 1. Be prepared for your flesh and your name, like your days, to be numbered. You will be treated like numbers should, crunched and interchangeable. Chapter 2. Care will take the form of unsolicited apologies, colored ribbons, and changed profile photos. You will be someone's crowdfunding campaign and comment thread full of condolences. They will claim to know you better than you know yourself. Chapter 3. Not only the ones in scrubs will interpret your silence as consent. They are not asking you how you are feeling for you to actually respond. Chapter 4. A machine will be dignified with more agency even as it slowly becomes you. Get acquainted with that beeping. It will be your only company and the one doing the talking. At least the talking that matters. The visits and calls will be nice at first, but when you begin to meet them more than they signed up for, they will ghost you faster than you can haunt them. Chapter 6. If you are losing their war, don't worry. You will be advancing more than just their research. Chapter 7. The right to die on your own terms is strictly reserved for when you have become a lost cause, or if you can afford it. Chapter 8. A chaplain may be provided to help encourage you to sign those consent forms faster. Chapter 9. If you must die, do it quietly without troubling the nurses who already have had to mother you, and after your file has at least 10 others stacked on top of it. Chapter 10. Even after they call time of death, you may still yet be useful. Because disability has been such a animating force in my life, I wanted to think a lot about what it meant to share the exact same disability that my mother has. We both have the exact same form of scoliotic spine, so we both have that S curve. And one of my attempts at expressing love for her was to encourage her to get a cane, which I currently use whenever I'm in a lot of pain. To this day, I have not been successful, but I thought in some ways this poem might magic that into being. This poem is entitled On Purchasing a Cane. To convince her that I share her pain, here hovering between us like locusts on fragile crop, rent open to the planet on the brink, I hint to her of a curved form, solid rather than inchoate, substantial rather than ethereal, that could support a crooked future, filled and hobbling with our stooping, fierce and exultant, a crutch for joy that she and I can reach when we must, if only to make our bodies quiet manifestos. This collection also was one of the first times that I've ever written very prominently about my Chineseness and my family history. My father and I have not always had the easiest relationship. And when I turned 18 and I was leaving for college, my father, who is what I would describe as the quintessentially stereotypical Chinese man, stoic, not very much someone who wears his feelings on his sleeve, mysteriously out of the blue decided to apologize to me. And because I was an asshole at 18, I did not accept his apology. Um, and this, in many ways, was a voicemail I wanted to leave my father, but I never had the courage to do. So this poem is entitled One New Message. I went out to get the messages, but I forgot everything but the potatoes, the only hearty thing the size of a fist. But mom taught me how to weigh things by hand, and it felt right. I mean, how seldom do things feel this way in this clot of a world when my body is a threat to your body, when really all bodies are a little scary and full of risks that little numbers make okay because we can count them. Though you know how bad I am at arithmetic, because you can't math your way out of fear about the next thing that waits at the corner like the cop who hasn't made his quota. But you told me to be brave, because that is what boys do. But I prefer to boy a very different way, even if there won't be my favorite placemat with the flowers on it. It's okay. I'll eat the old peaches you leave out, even if they are for uncle and grandma and grandpa, who come only when invited. But in my house, welcome is for any person who takes off their shoes, so you can come by too, if you want, but only if you really want. It happens to be my partner's 42nd birthday, and he hates sappy birthday things. So what am I going to do? Precisely what he hates most, which is to do a poem in his honor. Um, it took a long time for me to trust someone that I love to touch my back in really any intimate way. And this poem was a kind of magical realist take on that moment, which to this day I still feel was a kind of out of body experience. And this poem is entitled Dorsality, and this is for Nolan Weir. When I let him touch the small of my back for the first time, I thought a fin would erupt forth to ground me while I learned to breathe in new waters. This first and sacred time when I was becoming something else entirely too slick, for the flesh I know must stay in motion or risk never moving again. I have two more poems for you. This next one is one that is a real reflection of how much this book was an experiment in literary form. I never really got along with very tight metrical or stanzaic forms. I I think many of the folks in this room would know this particular experience. I was in creative writing in high school, and I remembered resenting how much complicated literary forms were everyone's obsession. This idea that the harder the form, the better the poem must be because you were able to write a sestina, which I thought was a load of bullshit. So I was like, screw literary form for a really long time. But I learned so much in writing this book that constraint is often the most powerful generator for creativity, and that was something I needed to learn for myself. So this poem is a pantoum. Pantoums are a unusual form in the sense that they involve the second and fourth lines of the stanza that comes before it that become the first and third lines of the next stanza. So there's a kind of repetition, but repetition with difference. And I often think of this poem as the soul of this collection. And this poem is entitled, When Did We Learn That Hitting Things Made Them More Tender? When did we learn that hitting things made them more tender? Rather than a caress, we prefer the mallet that softens the chew. We make them more tender for the crassness of a need. The mallet that softens the chew breaks apart humble flesh, for the crassness of a need takes no care in breaking apart humble from flesh, limp now with submission. Taking no care, we together limp now with submission toward each other. We together praise the blows that ache us toward each other, back into new hardness. Praise the blows that ache us. This is how we put our backs into new hardness when we could have remained soft. My last one is a homage to my now 10-year-old rescue cat, Freddie Mercury. He is simultaneously the most, I feel like the most uh, positive figure in teaching me how to be just slower in my life. And this poem was actually written because I discovered that the word mackerel has actually nothing to do with fish at first. It's actually a coloring. And my cat is a gray tabby, and I realized mackerel is actually the perfect color description for him. The title of this poem is Ode to Fortunus. Mercury is also the Roman name for Hermes, the messenger god. There is a certain form of Mercury that is a good luck charm. That is Mercury Fortunist. So I often refer to him as Fortunus. So this is Ode to Fortunus, and this is for little Mercury. You in chaste wanting climb upon me with a new species of thrum. So I capitulate, with sleep still poppying these eyes, to your winged feet already bounding past. Curl as is your wont beside me, alive prompting in murmurs to remember how lightness recedes from our paws that tend to regret their white. May you mackerel with majesty, my little trickster, so I may collect the gray silk you tender like daily gifts for your rescue, when I was in need of saving from more than just the city that once bombed itself. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Travis. Um, Beautiful, beautiful poems. Again, the tenderness, very clear in these poems. And no one on this reading series ever has to apologize for reading a love poem. We need more of them in the world, in my opinion, and they are not sappy, especially when they're as well written as that one was, as those two were, the one to your cat as well. Um, and we have one more reader for this evening, uh, Nadia, Alexis. I am not as familiar with Nadia's work, or I wasn't until we talked about booking the series and have started to read some of her work and become enamored with it as well. Um, and I try to do a little bit of research, when I host people on the show. And I was really struck by something that I read in an interview that Nadia gave in Shenandoah. And I think all the writers here tonight have new books out. And I think that this quote really struck me because I think everybody that's reading could relate to it. I could relate to it. A lot of the people in our audience are writers and I think could also relate to it. And in this um, interview, Nadia said, writing the book was transformative for me. And even now, years after I completed the first version of the manuscript and a couple of years after it was accepted for publication, I've transformed even more. And I love that. I love knowing that transformation continues if you let it, that I'm still becoming, and that I can be grateful to the past versions of me who made this book. And this book, which I'm speaking of, is Beyond the Watershed, which I'm going to link in the chat. And I can't wait to hear Nadia read these poems this evening. So Nadia, it is all yours.
Thank you. Hopefully, okay, my audio is working. Awesome. This is my book. This is my cover, which I love this cover. Um, I love that the book designer took risks. I feel like he took risks with that because who does that? Like puts two images together. Okay, so I'm gonna read some poems, and some of them are gonna be poems that you've heard before, Dorothy. So I know Dorothy has come to some of my events. But I like to start with the title poem of the book, and it's called Watershed. And actually, this was the last poem that I wrote for the book, interestingly enough. Um, Watershed. I arrive at my father's feet, a dying mapu tree. He covers his eyes with mud while goats feast on my fallen hair. I hear my mother call for the Lord to send just enough rain for our lungs and her carnations to see a new season. My mother always said boys are best at taking. I once loved a boy who turned pomegranates in my yard into salt. In the mirror, I see a donkey's head without a home, and she teaches me how to wail for cover. My mother and I kneel on uncooked rice. Sweat of our hands no longer remembers its owner. Our knees become prunes. One night I see my father weep and rock like a forgotten river. How he must know what it's like to fight against disappearance. The longer I stay in the home my lover and I built on this mountain, the more I tire of circadian leaps into the field of cacti. Every year, Lake Azuye rises and forces change on the trees and birds and people of the watershed. They no longer believe the water will leave them. I spend nights running from hail and the company of vultures. I make peace with the ways my father and I look away from errors and ruin. My parents make rituals of warnings, and I follow in their footsteps anyway. My mother says I can build a new home from clouds, and I believe her. I have a series of poems in this book with the title Prayer to Ezuli Danto. And she is a Haitian voodoo spirit who is considered the mother of Haiti in her role in the Haitian Revolution, but she's also a sort of patron saint, if you will, for women and children who are victims of abuse. So I wrote 6 poems to her, and I'll read maybe 2 of them, but I'm going to start with number 2 and jump back to the other one later. Prayer to Ezli Danto, number 2. Oh, and there's a photograph that appears beside each one. These are photographs that I made out in the wilderness in Mississippi, Oxford. These are self-portraits. All the photographs in the book are self-portraits. Prayer to Ezli Danto, number 2. I lay in my own blood and remember them enough to write them all dead. Can I ask you, have you ever gazed at your lover and found yourself turned into a time traveler? One day he makes a mango trail of you instead of bruising you eternally, or you are buried alive in a makeshift grave, or you are eating each second of his hands, telling you of a kingdom you never knew. And so the story goes, we are given powers we never asked for. Every attempt to leave is a pigeon sentenced to life as a fledgling. Again and again, I fall in what I think is home. People look at me in confusion and say, I must like being held underwater. Next poem is called A Horse's Arrival. And it's a poem, it's an ekphrasis poem in response to the late photographer. Her name is Valda Nogueira, and she's from Brazil. There's just a really striking, it's still on her Instagram, really striking image of a horse. Um, and I was looking at it and seeing similarity. Like I was trying to think about myself in relation to the horse. Um, a horse's arrival. Clouds move quickly above your gate, and my feet lodged in glassy, tainted sand. Your faint colored skin hangs, seeming to have aged quicker than God or your mother intended. I like to think we arrive in the pass of each other's hungers. Oh, Mare, I want to ask how you walk so smoothly despite devastation. Sometimes I can do this too, and yes, I notice how the ocean water turned on all its fish, how the oysters have disappeared, and the more humans force metal pollution. I ask for permission to touch your neck and take your lean forward as a yes. Rest my palm there, startled. It feels like the pulses of three dancing women in your flesh, perhaps from another land. When I was a little girl, I thought anything was possible, like leaving Earth on a cardboard spaceship or becoming my own hero. Dear Mare, closer now. I know what it's like to be dominated against your will. I know what it's like to stand in the face of other beings' selfishness. I know I can be selfish. Your black hair, dull silk, blowing in the wind. I search for answers in your body's shadows, only to stumble empty handed and back into my own longings. Um, okay. I'm going to read maybe three more. Where are we going? We're going to go to Cantaloupe. No, we're going to go to How to Be Friends with a Sex Worker. Normally I have it all planned out, but I was like, I'm just going to freestyle and just kind of like see what other people read and maybe try to read in conversation. Um, I don't know that this is in conversation, but this is just a freestyle one, I guess. Um, oh, one thing about the horse's arrival poem, there's a line where it's something about becoming your own hero. I thought that was so interesting that I wrote that because I definitely believe that I can be my own hero now. So reading some of the poems is so interesting because, and I left them the way they were, even if I disagreed or something or had an expanded view. But that line, when I read it, um, I feel like I'm lying because I feel a little disconnected from it. But I left it because it honored that self who wrote it. Okay, How to Be Friends with a Sex Worker. Two-part poem. One, sit in the diner, wait for her to arrive, gaze at the sun in the wall. Pull out your phone, slide your thumb across the screen, look up and smile when she walks through the door. In 2 weeks, she is 19. Watch her search through lips and eyes undone with hunger. Wave your hand, stand as she walks to the table. Listen to the screech of home and the hug you share. Ask her how she's doing. Sit down, watch her hair bend in the August of her fingers. She tells you she's tired, but she's good. She asks you what's new. You tell her about the latest fight you're having with your man. She shakes her head and laughs. She tells you about the Craigslist date she had and how her pimp took all the money. Bread crumbles in your hand. 2. Jump when you hear the ring. See an unfamiliar number appear on your screen. Pick up the phone. Try to hide the worry in your voice. Say hello. Her voice is loaded with bricks. She says he left her stranded. He took her purse. No phone, no money, no cigarettes. She is in New Jersey. She is cold. He is gone. She is crying. You are not breathing. You close your eyes and curse him again. She tells you he wants to teach her a lesson. You ask her what she needs you to do. She says she'll figure it out and call back. She doesn't. You try to sleep but can't. The sun rises. You call her phone again. He picks up. You ask him where she is. He calls you a bitch and tells you to mind your business. You call him a piece of shit, promise him he will pay, demand to speak to her now. He sucks his teeth and click. You call back. He hits ignore. You call again. He passes her the phone. She says hello. You ask if she's okay. Your chest is lava. She says she's okay now. You sigh and tell her there's no home in this life. She tells you not to worry and that she's really okay. 3. It's spring break. You meet her at a bar. It's been weeks since you last spoke. You're late. She looks at you in annoyance. You laugh and apologize. She tells you she's left him. You inhale. She works for herself now. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote during the pandemic. Like, in the thick of it. And when it was really difficult to write. It actually was a letter that I wrote to a poet friend that I turned into a poem. It's called Letter to My Friend Robert. This morning I wanted to write, so I changed into my outside clothes, unlocked the door, and walked onto my block where I thought of my father, whose favorite hobby is walking up and down and around the streets of Harlem against my understanding. Until today, when I find myself seeking some kind of fire in the air. And now I'm a couple of blocks and beats of birdsong away from my Mississippi doorstep, passing by a fenced-in white dog who barks and growls at me like she believes I've taken something, or she is displeased with the unshuttered windows, absent of human bodies, peering through to see about her. And oh, how green it is today that I am almost in disbelief at how nature changes in a matter of hours, or the 2 weeks it's been since I returned to the mouth of this trail on a chilly overcast afternoon where I was met with downed trees strewn about as if all that mattered was their continued proximity to home. And this comforted me, despite my deepest love being them standing alive. And today I'm convinced some God came by and dropped off a new forest and new eyes for those who beg for relief, as sudden as this vision I have of an imaginary father addicted to walking because it lets him time travel to other worlds, almost like watching a film. And some days he doesn't know what he'll get. And maybe there's magic in not knowing that one day you could arrive at the heart of a lake and there are guitars and drums and keyboards floating in the breeze, playing tunes that feel familiar and unfamiliar, and you can dance to. and pray to the edge of a fallen leaf. Turn yourself inside out, and oh, Robert, this trail is a whisperer and a mirror I wish you could see. And please do tell if you have a spot in Brooklyn like this one that implores me to take what I need and leave an offering if I have one to give, and journey back to myself to arrive at a blank page and call it green, call it mockingbird, call it train, call it break, call it bloom. The last poem I will read is Prayer to Esley Danto number 5. In my dreams, I run across the ocean and become more woman with each wave. Something like you. I fly bruiseless and renewed by the blue suns. Assemblies of mothers and daughters sing and laugh big until we all fly hand in hand. We sweat and become our own guava horizons. Every coconut tree is a city that welcomes us. No one tries to take the moon from our teeth. In this world, we don't have to lower our heads or bend. Everywhere we go, so does the water. Our hair shimmies at the clouds and makes song with the wind. No rape, no black eyes, no pockets or souls sucked dry. No one to lead us away from this home. Everything we can dream is blooming and true. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. All four of you, such lovely poems. These endings on these poems tonight, like I was trying to write them all down, I couldn't get them all. I don't know why I was trying to write them all down because I have your books. I can just go look them up, but I have this compulsion to write them down when I'm listening. Thank you so much to our four readers. Thank you so much to our audience for being here. Um, we are going to be back more regularly now with the series. Our next reading is going to be December 11th. And we are going to have like a holiday extravaganza of 6 readers, or Donna Sprate Metz, Erin Dorney, Catherine Kirkpatrick, Jennifer Saunders, Rebecca Lehman, and Dustin Brookshire are going to read for us on December 11th. So you can put that on your calendar if you'd like to come back and hear some other poets. To our 4 poets again tonight, thank you so much for sharing your words with all of us. The meeting was recorded, or is being recorded, obviously, and will be on our YouTube channel probably by tomorrow. And readers, I will send you that link as well so you can share it with people who maybe couldn't make it. I am going to stop the recording now and just say one more final thank you to all of you for being here. And we hope that we see you again soon.